Hey guys, Stealth here, and welcome to this sponsored video on Iron Conflict. Yes, it's a sponsored video, the devs are paying me to make this vid. Iron Conflict. I covered it a while ago, and back then it was in playtesting. You could join the playtest back in, I think it was October, and in one of the videos that I did on the game, there was this very annoying beeping tone. It was the beeping tone that you got when you were locking onto an enemy target. Now, I'm very happy to say that that thing's gone. They patched that out right quick. And the game is currently in early access. You can play it right now, and the price is going to be about 15 bucks or local equivalent, so $15 or equivalent. Now, what is Iron Conflict about? As you can see from what I have on the screen right now, it is a bit resembling World of Tanks, War Thunder, Armored Warfare, games of that genre. What you have, however, is a mix-up between armored vehicles, air vehicles, and even infantry. And you can use these in what the game calls a formation. In a formation you pick 3 different units. In this case I have picked the MA-26, so the Pershing, the BA-29 and the MA-24. The game has quite a few different units that you can pick from. They have tanks, heavy tanks and light tanks. The heavy tanks doing most of the punching. The light tanks being more mobile, versatile, and of course more poorly armored. They're fast, and their job is to hunt down and scout. So if you have an enemy that's using a lot of anti-air, for example, then you can send in the the MA-24, the Chaffee, or other light tank to hunt those units down. The game works in a multiplayer format. It's currently a 10 versus 10, which effectively means you have 30 units fighting 30 other units. Now we have the heavy tanks and the light tanks. We also have the artillery units, starting with the MA-114, and you might be able to tell what these units are supposed to be, but because it's a developer from Hong Kong, I don't think that they have all the rights to use the actual units' names. So, for example, the M8 that you can see over here, they call it the MA-8. Anyway, we have the artillery, and you have those in 2 different variants. You have the standard towed artillery / tube artillery, and eventually that becomes mobile artillery. But you also can go the way of the ballistic missile. Now, I haven't tried these things yet, I haven't gotten that far up the tech tree, but I imagine that these things do a lot of damage, but are far slower in the rate of fire than, for example, the mobile artillery. Then we have anti-air, and anti-air comes in 2 different flavors as well. You got the mobile anti-air guns, starting with over here the MA-118, although this is simple towed artillery. At some point it becomes mobile anti-air cannons, which means that they're self-propelled instead of being towed. And that ends up all the way over here with the MA-6 linebacker. The other option that you have is going for missile anti-air, starting with the MA-23 and ending up all the way at tier 8 with the Patriot. This thing is going to be really quite potent against enemy airplanes. Now, as you can see, it is early access, and that means that sometimes you will still find some of the Chinese origin of the game. That is something that I'm not going to try to hide. It is part of what I'm currently seeing on the screen, so there's not really any point in hiding it. So that is the ground units. What about air units? A couple of different trees that you can go on. The FAH-1 is the first aircraft that you can get in the fighter tech tree. And eventually you're going to go through the F4, and then you can make a split. You can get for the F-16 fighter aircraft, ending up with the FA-35, so the JSF, or the FA-22. Now, the FA-35 is an attack aircraft that can also deal quite a bit of damage to ground units. The FA-22, or the F-22 Raptor, is much more of an air-to-air bird. That's what that has for a purpose. Then we have the bombers, starting with the BA-29 and ending up with the B-2A, aka the B-2 Spirit. These things are designated ground attack aircraft, and you can get some serious effects out of these. Right now, I think my most damaging unit is the bomber. It is simply the most destructive unit, if you play them well. Because what I've also seen people do is rush in with these aircraft and do all sorts of stupid shit. And then we have the PA-2 surveillance aircraft tree. These things are far more of a spotter. And as you can see, they have 0 firepower rating. They don't do any kind of damage. Now, eventually, you're going to end up with the RQA-4A, and that is a scout drone. It is the Reaper. I just don't know if it can be armed. Supposedly, there is a firepower module, but whether that thing actually can be filled with anything, I don't know. I haven't made it that far yet. You got the synthetic aperture, so that's your visual range. Yeah, at the moment I don't really see these things being armed. But then again, scouting is a very important role. And scouting is something that also gets you XP. Now, talking about XP, over here we have the resources that this game has. You have gold, you have silver, you have combat experience that you can convert to free experience, and then you have something that they call gold tickets. Special in-game currency, you can earn these through doing battles and mostly through doing missions. The daily missions will at some point reward you with these tickets. Now, what you can do with the silver is buy units and repair units, but also upgrade units. For example, if I wanted to upgrade my Chaffee over here, my MA-24, I can go over here, which for World of Tanks and probably War Thunder users is very familiar, and you can add generic accessories to your MA-24, such as repair kit, commander telescope, camouflage netting, all sorts of stuff that's going to make your unit more effective by changing some of the stats. Reducing reload time, for example, getting a better turret rotation speed. All of these things are probably pretty familiar. Now there's one unit category that I haven't talked about yet, and that's infantry. The Scouts. They're currently just called Scout 1 all the way through Scout 8, and these guys are, at least in their early day, a bit underwhelming. Because all that they get is a Scout 1 firepower module, which basically means they get a gun. That's it. Eventually, however, they can get some fairly interesting tech. Radar sensors. These are deployable installations that allow you to get information about a surrounding area. And if you have enough of these, they can even provide you quite a bit of map coverage, and thus maybe map control, because if you know where the enemy is, you might know how to counter them as well. Of course, it is a multiplayer game, so you are going to be reliant upon your allies to do some of the damage. As you can only take 3 different units in a lineup, or in a formation, it's hard to cover all your bases. In this case, in Formation 1, I have the MA-26, so the Pershing, the damage dealer, I have another damage dealer, and I have a scout. The moment that an enemy aircraft comes after this formation, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to need to find a friendly anti-air gun, or a friendly fighter to sort of hide behind. And they will have to do the damage against the airplanes. This also works in reverse. In Formation 2, I have the PA-2, my surveillance aircraft, which is completely unarmed. If this is my last surviving unit, all I can do is spot for my team. But I cannot do any capturing of bases, nor can I do any kind of damage. So in this case, sure enough, I'm going to be less useful for the team. Spotting, you can argue, is still valuable, but maybe less so if you're not actually having around a unit to do damage. What else do we have on the screen? Well, you have over here the Eagle and the Dragon. Lion and Bear are yet to be filled. Those tech trees are currently empty, but then again, the game is just going out into early access today, so that means that these 2 tech trees are still to be filled in. Eagle is the US tech tree, and Dragon is the Chinese tech tree. You might recognize the C-58. Let me pull it up. The C-58, if I'm not mistaken, is basically a T-34. It's basically a T-34. These things are actually surprisingly fast. Surprisingly fast relative to the heavy unit that the Americans get, the MA-26. But I have found that the MA-26 just has much more of a punch. So if you want to use the Chinese vehicle, the C-58 or the T-34, what you're going to have to do is flank. Because what the game also has is armor modeling. It doesn't just give you a hit point bar, it gives you armor. If that armor happens to be angled, you are going to be able to bounce shots. I have actually seen shots from a T-34, sorry, a C-58, bounce off the armor plating on an artillery gun. I was quite surprised to see that ricochet, but apparently that is a thing. Now in this case, I'm first going to take formation 1, because I have a couple of those units. And I already have them tiered up, or at least teched up. In case you want to see what a unit has, you go to tech. And you go to the unit that is currently being discussed, in this case the MA-26. And in this case I can upgrade to a better engine, I can upgrade to a better chassis, I can upgrade to a better gun. And eventually, if I gather enough experience, I can upgrade to the MA-46 or the MA-40 mobile artillery. Or both, depending of course on what you want. So, let's get into the lineup. And you can do that simply by hitting join battle, or you can team up with your allies on Steam. So if you have some buddies who are also playing this game, just team up and you can get a very potent coordination going. Where, for example, you provide the punch, you provide 1 or 2 tanks and maybe a scout, and they provide the air cover, or the anti-air cover. Right, join battle. My experience with waiting in the queue is a bit varying. I have had battles where I went into the queue in 30 seconds. I've also had battles where I went into the queue for 2 minutes. Probably, as you will see more players actually joining into this game, the queue time will go down. There will be less of a wait time. And I think that's good, because the faster you get into battle, the more likely you are to come back to this game. Alright, after a bit in the queue, we're loading into the game, and you can see what the other players have. Left hand side, my team, right hand side, enemy team. For example, I can see that Bend has the MA-24, a scout, and an MA-118. So if I'm not mistaken, that's an anti-air gun. Somebody went all planes over here, player 66. I have somebody going with a plane, a fighter, so that's an infantry unit, and a ZGP-55. You can mix and match as you see fit.
Preparations complete, Commander.
Now when it comes to the gameplay, what I have over here is the MA-26. I'm going to try and just get to the front line, which pretty much spans across the middle of the map, usually. Although you can also use these flanks over here. One thing that I've seen a lot of players do is rush their aircraft forward immediately. My BA-29 is not suitable for that. The BA-29 bomber has this circle in front of it, and the moment that I press F, I drop a bomb. These things do better when there is not nearly as much anti-air around. Now over here we can already see a fighter going off against a PA-2, so that's a surveillance aircraft. And you can see that it's doing damage. You can see the hit point bar on the PA-2 going down. And the FAH-1 looks to be winning this fight, but I think it's reloading, seeing the bar below the health bar go up. Now, I don't think... Yeah, my Chaffee is in a decent position. I'm going to hold the Chaffee back a little bit. I first want to see how well I can do with the rest. So with the MA-26 and my allies here, because Pasta Chip also has an MA-26. And we have the ZGP-55 here, so we have an AA gun from this guy who I don't know how to pronounce his username. What we can see here is an enemy fighter, an FAH-1, another aircraft coming in, and we have spotted a C-58, basically a T-34. I'm going to let that thing come up. You can see that I am in range. But, there we go, damage 156, but the damage that they can do to me is inefficient, or ineffective, because I simply bounce their shots. Fire again, and that kill is mine. That's 1 tank less to worry about, which means that I might be able to bring the Chaffee up a bit closer, and see if I can get the Chaffee to hunt down some of their units. Because one thing that the MA-26 does not do very well is spot. It is pretty reliant upon exterior spotters. Now over here we have a pretty bad matchup. MA-24 against an AA gun. That's not going to go well. So I'm going to try and assist here as much as I can. while using these buildings over here, these what I think to be greenhouses, to cover my approach, so that I don't have a flank armor exposed. Got a scout infantry unit over here. That's a nice target for my MA-24. There we go. That's the scout dead. Now, considering that they probably know where I am, it's a decent time to start moving away. What have you detected? Ah, that's the MA-24. Sorry, MA-24. That's the scout that I'm hunting down. But the longer the range, the less the accuracy. So my chances of doing damage to that guy are diminishing very quickly. Now, I still have my bomber, and now I'm going to use that to hunt down this fighter group. The fighter is the Chinese version of the scout. Bombers are fantastic to use against them, if you can find them. Because the scout infantry is some of the most sneaky in the game. So, make sure you have the drop circle more or less on top, drop a couple of bombs, and wiped out the fighter infantry. I'm not sure what that guy was hoping to do, because it was really not going to end up very well for him. Now, this scout infantry group over here is also making a play. I want to get the Chaffee into range, but I don't... Oh, shit. I don't know if the Chaffee... There we go. I don't know if the scout is armed. Uh-oh. Incoming bomber. Time to go! The bomber against the MA-26 is not that great, but against the Chaffee is. So ideally, time to get back to the cover of my anti-air gun, provided that it survived. And I'm not sure about that. There's Bend MA-24. Still the Chaffee that I'm hunting down. And I think I might also be taking artillery fire at this point. Yep, that's definitely artillery fire coming from somewhere over there. Shot ineffective. I'm really overextended with this tank right now. And that's a bit of a problem. I really hope that Bomberman can take down that bomber that's chasing me down, but no, he's not in time. What do we got over here? Another fighter group. We have one fighter going off against another fighter group. So it's time for me to start moving the Chaffee into the cap and use the bomber to once again go after a fighter group. Although that fighter group is getting pinned down by the fighter, the MA-26, and another anti-air gun over here. And I think they killed it. There is a plane around here. It's another B-29. I can't hit that with my own B-29.
Ready for orders.
Chaffee rushing to position, and there is really not that much left. There's a Chaffee, an anti-air gun, a bomber, another T-34, a ZLP, which I think is an artillery unit, and another arty. So I just have to try and find those if I want to get some points. Ah, there's the tank. Now we can see that this tank is having a really nice field day against the MA-118, because it does not have any chance of doing damage against it. But there we go. That's done. Now what do we have here?
Preparations complete, Commander.
That's another MA-24.
Awaiting orders.
In this case, armor angling could be useful. The tank's already dead, but normally I would be a big a big proponent of making sure that you have your tank armored in the or angled in the wrong way. So make sure you have it with its frontal armor towards the enemy. Now there's very, very few left on the enemy team, so I really don't have to do much but cap. And the cap with all these units inside is going to go pretty quick. 40 seconds and the match is potentially done. In the meanwhile, there seems to be an anti-air gun that's running away.
Ready for orders.
The BA-29 is not ideal to hunt down an anti-air gun. The anti-air gun in its current state is not equipped to fight me, because it's not deployed. So in this case, I can pretty easily fly up to its last known location and just do a carpet run. And there we go. That's the ZLP-54 dead, leaving just one MA-118 and a ZLP-54. There's another one. What are you exactly? Oh, you're an artillery unit, the ZLP. And there we go. Job done. Victory. Really quick matches. This was 6 minutes, if that. Now, at the end of the battle, you get an overview of what unit did what. The Mi-26 killed 1, did a little bit of assisting damage, and did a fair amount of direct damage. The bomber was able to do 202 damage, and the Chaffee 84, but getting 2 kills. So maybe killing off some of the units that were already weakened by somebody else. This gets you unit experience and rewards you with silver. Again, the silver is used to get more stuff for your vehicles and eventually buy new vehicles. So that is the ground warfare mostly. Now let's go for an air wing and anti-air. So this lineup consists of my anti-air gun, my reconnaissance bird, and my FAH-1 fighter. Although fighter, yes, it is a fighter, but it does not do particularly well since it doesn't have any missiles, doesn't have any rockets, but you can research those. You can get those. I just don't have enough experience yet. You can get the FAH-1 anti-air rocket or air-to-air rocket, and you can get the 50-kilogram bomb, which allows you to do some really light bombing runs on susceptible targets. So for example, hunting down enemy artillery might be an option, or going for those infantry scout groups. Right, let's deploy this group into battle. Alright, we're loading in, and I have my lineup of my anti-air gun and my fighters. We're starting on the left flank of the map. What do they have? FAH-1, that's a fighter, recon aircraft. L5 is not, I think it's also a fighter, it's just the Chinese one. I'm seeing 1 BA-29 and a bunch of fighters. So most of these are using fighters, which means that my anti-air gun is going to have a lot to do. I'm going to send the MA-18 somewhere towards the middle of the map. These anti-air guns have surprisingly good range, so make sure that you deploy them in a position from where they can be used effectively, not right next to a house. I'm not going to send all my aircraft directly to the front line. Again, this is something that I see other people do, and I really, really don't recommend it. Because what happens usually is that our aircraft, our PA-2, he might spot stuff, but at the same time, he is going to get detected real quick, and he's going to get shot down even faster. Now, I already have 2 PA-2s, so what I'm going to do over here is deploy my anti-air gun and just let it rip into the enemy. And look at the range here. This aircraft that I'm firing at is over here, which is probably 2 or 3 grid squares away from where I'm trying, or from where my anti-air gun is parked. And this L5 doesn't even have anything to do over here except for shoot down enemy fighters. Which, in this case, for the enemy team, it's not that useful. Because we don't have a lot of aircraft. We have 1, 2 BA-29s. But if those BA-29s are any clever, they're not going to go into the fight just yet. Because they wouldn't benefit. Now, I'm doing a fair amount of damage over here to Lupercal's FAH-1. And one of the fighters is able to shoot it down. Alright, time to relocate the anti-air gun. Anti-air guns are really, really susceptible to getting killed off by light tanks. The light tanks will catch up to them and will kill them. Now there's another aircraft over there. That's an FAH-1 and a PA-2, so a fighter and a reconnaissance aircraft. And I'm not the only anti-air gun over here. There is another one, a ZGP-55. What I'm also seeing here is quite a few red blips. I really don't want to force an encounter with that T-34 or the C-58, because I won't win that. I am not going to try that. Now, there we go. The ZGP shot that one down. And there's another PA-2. That's the one that I was looking for. I'm going to deprive the enemy of the vision that they have over here, so that the tanks that we have on the ground from 1988 have a far better chance of making it towards the front line, without getting hampered by, for example, artillery. Alright, this is a decent spot, also allowing for fire cover for the Mi-26 and the recon, or sorry, the Chaffee. And the PA-2 blunders into range, gets shot at, and there goes another aircraft. How many aircraft did they lose? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 aircraft so far. And that's the problem. Right there. That's the problem. People losing aircraft way too quickly. I still have mine. their fighters are mostly dead. Their anti-air guns are still up. But I do feel a lot more confident about my ability to now go on the hunt against, for example, this BA-29 over here. If I take that guy out, this MA-26 is probably going to be quite grateful. There's also something happening over here. Yeah, I probably can't do anything damage against that. Because that's an MA-26, and my fighter is not quite equipped to do damage. Yeah, shot ineffective. Just emptied a whole clip. And it did absolutely nothing. What we got here? An MA-24. I might be able to hit that. Because Chaffies have far less ammo. Sorry, far less armor. So let's try and hunt it down. Keep the PA-2 over it, so we can keep an eye on it. Shot ineffective. Ah, there we go. We're doing some damage. It's not a lot, but then again, this thing doesn't need that much more. Reloading.
Ready for orders. Affirmative.
I'm trying to shut this thing down before it takes out our artillery. Thank you. Okay, he's down. Do they still have an aircraft? Yep, that PA-2 is still up there from No Way. And my anti-air gun is trying to take it down. But I can probably safely move up right now. And I also have to keep an eye on that MA-26 that they have moving. So we're going to move here. Stick relatively close to my to my tank buddy. To make sure that my anti-air does not get taken down. What do we have here? Okay, that, if I'm not mistaken, is an anti-air gun. Not really the thing that you want to take down with a fighter, but in this case, if it's not deployed, I can pretty safely go after it. So my fighter's just doing a strafing run against the anti-air gun. And these guys are not deploying their anti-air gun, which means that I can safely take it out. Now this is the part that I really like about the game. You can pretty easily outsmart your opponents, and initially, especially during the playtest, there were a lot of bots, and there was no outsmarting. In this case, there is. And, for example, with the way that I used my aircraft and not sent them out in front, I can now pretty safely engage whatever I happen to see, without really any concern. Of course, there are anti-air guns that I still might have to keep an eye out on, but beyond that, well, I really don't have that much. The only thing that I'm a bit worried about is their tank. That one, the MA-26. So I'm gonna keep my distance with my anti-air gun. Oh, we've actually been able to do some damage against it. What I'm also gonna try and do is shadow it. Deploy that. And I think that my recon bird's getting engaged. Yep, we got a fighter over there. Time to deploy the anti-air gun. Come on, buddy. We got a fighter up there, an FAH-1. It needs to go down. Oh, and they also have a ZLP-54 coming in. That's an artillery unit. It's substantially poorly armored, so it's really easy to take down. Although it's not really the main target, as I was hoping to take down the FAH-1. And the FAH-1 is running. It's noticed that my FAH-1 is now getting support from my anti-air unit. And because of that, it really does not want to stick out and fight. Which, of course, in this case is the right call. Now it's my time to turn. And I'm going to keep my recon bird over the MA-26. Whoa, 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 whoa. Get back here. My anti-air gun... No, it was my fighter that was taking damage. There's another MA-26. And there's the fighter again. I need this fighter to disengage my own. There's the PA-2 that I was hunting all this time. So that's going to be the target of my fighter. Let's reload. Press Y on the keyboard to automatically reload. I want to go into that fight with the with the PA-2 reconnaissance aircraft with a full clip. Off you go.
Bingo. Target hit.
Couple of hits.
Bingo.
Let's take it down. Off you go. Alright, who do we have here? Another MA-26. I don't think I have the armor pen to do a lot of damage against that, if any.
The enemy has discovered my position.
But that other MA-26 might. Now, we're losing quite a few units. We still have a heavy tank, but I think that's not going to last for very long.
Ready for orders.
Although... There we go. He did it. Well done. Okay. My anti-air gun's still alive. Oh, shit. Not for much longer at this rate. Time to pack up and get the hell out. Go. Go, go, go. Yep, too late. What do they still have left? Their tank, an anti-air gun, and a fighter. Artillery, anti-air, artillery, and more artillery. So quite a lot of arty. But more importantly, this thing. And that's their... Oh, shit. Yep. Their anti-air gun has moved up. Get out of here.
Ready for orders.
I'm not sure if I can keep that reconnaissance bird alive. This entire circle on the minimap, and I'm going to blow that up a bit, that is the spotting that my reconnaissance aircraft is doing. That is how much the PA-2 can add to the team at the moment. So what I'm going to try and do is support the MA-26, just spot for it, so that it can use that great gun of its to take out, well, potentially the tank. But preferably, yep, that's it. The anti-air ground. There we go. The anti-air guns, that's what I want to take down. We need that AA dead. What? Input length exceeds the limit. Okay, never mind then, I guess. In this case, I don't really see a good path to victory. We still have 5 minutes left on the game. And I still have my fighter. Let's make sure it's reloaded. Full clip. If I can circumvent their anti-air and ignore their fighter, or preferably shoot it down, I can potentially hunt down any artillery that they have. The ZLP and the MA-14. Sorry, MA-114. The MA-118 and the ZGP-55 anti-aircraft guns can definitely pose a risk. I hope that I don't get detected by those, however. And what we still have left is 3 arty. And they need a spotter. Now, as you can see, the spotting range on the aircraft, the fighter, is far, far worse than the one on the reconnaissance aircraft. So the chances of me spotting anything and being able to engage it in the same strafing run are very poor. I really need the MA-26 to start wiping out anti-air guns and maybe spotting stuff for me, or me spotting it in advance so it can go after it. Because the way that it's going now, I don't really have a lot of hopes of this unit still being able to survive. Ah, you found an artillery unit. Go hunt it. Chances are it'll be dead. There we go. Oh, they have something in the base. I have an idea what that might be. Namely the MA-26. And these artillery units, well, it's going to be unlikely that they're able to do much. So I guess, despite all that you would normally use a fighter for, I'm going to have to try and go back and spot it. Going to spot base. What? Why can I not say that? Exceeds limit. Come on. It really isn't that long of a chat message. 34 seconds until they cap. I don't think I'm going to win this one.
Target destroyed.
Uh-oh. Shoot base. Just randomly shoot it at this point. Because it does stop the cap. Our MA-26 is also trying to cap, but in this case it's the wrong play. Yeah, now we're capping, but they have it completed in 10 seconds, and we have it completed in 160. And there's their fighter.
I'm out of range of the enemy scouts.
Come on. I'm still taking it down. There we go. The fighter's down, but their anti-air gun is also working away my fighter, and at the same time, they capped. So unfortunately, my fighter goes down, but it did contribute quite a bit to the team. I was able to do quite a bit of spotting. I was able to do some anti-air with my anti-air gun. 340 direct damage. The fighter did more. But look at this. 936 assist damage, and even a couple of what the game calls first spots. Now this means that the reconnaissance aircraft got the second most amount of silver, the fighter, 2983, and reward silver for the anti-air gun was only 2590. Now, to summarize Iron Conflict, what I like about it, you have quick games. You can do a couple of games, well, I don't know, necessarily in your lunch break, since we're all working from home anyway. The queue is currently a bit of a bottleneck, because you really don't want to spend a minute or so in queue. I think that's too long. I think that a game like this should do that faster. But then again, as the player count goes up, so will the amount, or so will the amount of time that you spend in the queue decrease, hopefully. What I also like about it is that you have access to a lot of different units, and you can assemble these as you see fit. If you're more of a sniper, for example, you can go with mobile artillery and ballistic missiles, and maybe use an air defense missile system. If you are more inclined to be on the front line, I would encourage you to go for the Dragon line, and for example bring a C-69 and a WZC-1224 and a C-69-2, because you can have 3 units in a lineup. Just keep in mind, you won't really have that much spotting, and you will not have any kind of fighter defense or anti-air unit. And if you are more of a sneaky type, more of a flanker, go for a light tank and make sure that you get the scout infantry. Because initially they're not that good, but later on these guys get quite potent. Simply because they get all the gadgets. Anti-air guns, or sorry, anti-air missiles, rockets to deal with ground vehicles. Don't laugh, but they're even known to be using horseback. Let me see if I can show you that. Dragon fighter, here. They have a horseback upgrade, mounts horse, to increase unit movement speed by 14.4 kilometers an hour. Which in their case is very useful, because otherwise they're using about 5 kilometers an hour. Anyway, what I don't like about the game, it's a bit arcadey, and that might put some people off. It has Chinese roots, that is definitely obvious, or, well, I'm not even sure how the whole Hong Kong situation is at this point. The developer is from Hong Kong, but there are still some Chinese lines or Chinese markups in the game, as you can see at some point. It's not that polished. This is the game at full resolution. Sure, the units look good, but when you're actually in battle, it's not that pretty. It feels like a game from a few years ago. And I imagine that the game can get quite grindy. I'm not sure how bad this is going to be as you go up the tiers. Because I know from World of Warships, for example, that early on you don't get a lot of experience, but at the same time you don't need a lot of experience to advance to the next tier. As you just saw, I got about 30-35 experience for a defeat. You can get about double that for a good win, and then of course a premium account also helps. And again, the premium account was gifted by being an early tester, so I got a premium account for free. Now, if you look at the tech tree, it's going to get really expensive really quickly. Unlocking the tier 2 is going to cost you 745 research XP. Tier 3, 6,000. Tier 4, 19,000. It's entirely possible that when you're playing the MA60, you get 100, maybe 200, 300, 400 per match. And I think that would be acceptable. If you're only getting 20, 30, 40 XP per match, this thing is just out of range, out of reach. Let alone the MA1A2 SEP for 960,000 research XP. Yikes. Yikes. You're pretty much never going to get there unless the model that they use for the XP also goes up as you go up the tiers. Now finally, the store. You can get vehicles over here eventually. You can get gold, which is another way that this game earns money. You can get a premium account. Premium account actually is, from what I've seen, relatively affordable. It requires 15,000 gold to get a $360 account, and 15,000 gold is about $44, which means that they're cheaper than World of Warships, for example. Anyway, that is my overview of Iron Conflict. I will be playing more of the game. I will be hopefully updating you the moment that I get to Tier 2, Tier 3, and let you know how the grind is going to be. I'd say give the game a shot. And I'm not saying that because it's a sponsored video, but because I think there is something here. It's just quite rough at the moment. It's a diamond in the rough. They still need a lot of polishing. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. And who knows, maybe I'll see you out there on the battlefield of Iron Conflict.